Normally you would mix the whole tub up downstairs with a drill, like we did with the original plaster. But I'm just going to do it on the board here because we're not going to use that much anyway. And
so what would happen if, you know, you're doing this at home and you're not, you want to put your top coat on before it was really, your brown coat was really at the right dryness?
you can. There's a train of thought in lots of places that putting the plaster on when it's still this kind of dryness, wetness, whichever way you want to look at it, won't do any harm at all. What you will have to do is spend more time making sure that it's not cracking, looking at it, spending time talking to it, telling it to behave. So it can be easier. It's certainly, you're going to spend time regardless. I don't know that much about psychology, but I think that sometimes it's better to do something, walk away from it, and then reframe your mind to go and do the next step, as opposed to do something, finish it, and then have to then train yourself to stay there and look at, it's like watching paint dry, because it could set, it could go off, it could take 7 days, in which case you'd have to look at it every day. Sometimes you have to look at it twice a day, depends what the weather's doing. So I'm only mixing this by hand because it's...
Now, is that the same thing as in the thing that says lime putty?
No, this is finish coat. And it looks like this because it's made with marble dust. As a marble dust.
Marble.
Yeah, as opposed to sand that you get from a sand quarry. This has to have a certain fineness to it. So marble dust is crushed down, ground, and ends up being a little bit like this texture. As you can see, it's a lot slacker, wetter than the previous. This is a devil float. Effectively, we call it a devil float. It's the same as the float that you use to flatten the surface, exactly the same, except for I just put some screws through it at one end and made them stick out maybe 1/8 of an inch, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just to give you a little bit of like little tram lines across the plaster. And we use it on, I mean this is probably going to pull out quite a lot of hair from this because it's still wet, but we use this because that still needs a fairly large amount of physical key to put on here. And this at the moment, because it's been closed up with the previous floating technique, needs a little bit more help with the so, and that's all it needs to do. But again, you know, you'll need to make sure when you've done one patch that you'll take the hair off that. So,
and you're holding it at an angle like this.
Flat against
Holding it
flat against the plaster, but try not, again, a very light pressure, so there's no, you're not actually trying to compress the plaster, you're just using the plane of this to get that depth of.
Overlap?
You can overlap, yeah, won't do any harm.
That's a fulsome.
Yeah, we'll do that after, don't we? So,
Yeah, a little bit here and there.
yeah, it's because it's so wet, it's not holding the, and then we have to clean those off. Right. So some people use a very light scratching, so maybe they'll use a an oval that's that size. Some people use it that size. Some people do this size. Some people go diagonally and then back. But I find that the round motion generally stops you from damaging your own work as you're going through it, because if you try to do anything that you hadn't done before, it can cause problems with the surface of the plaster. So if you try to go diagonally, things like that. There's enough finish coat plaster on that spot board to do that wall, and probably half of that wall. So you can imagine that finish coat plaster goes a long way because you put it on really thin. So, and I only brought one hawk and trowel up because I think it's better. I'm going to show you a little bit. With a finished plaster, I always take less than I would with the original plaster, you know, the base coat plaster. Same thing. Same technique on the board. Just make sure you've got much less than you normally would have on your board. It's very wet, so it'll run very quick. Same thing. You won't be able to get it too neat on your trowel because it's very wet. Same technique. It's going to colour up a little bit because but you have to be much smoother on your plastering technique. Doesn't have to be perfectly flat, because after about 25 minutes, half an hour, I would take a sponge or maybe one of the polyurethane floats and actually compress it a little bit. And that actually compresses it, so it just makes it sure that it sits on the wall. And then after that, if I wanted to, but lots of people like a sponge finish, it looks kind of rustic, nice. But if you don't like the sponge finish, I would then use a very clean steel trowel and trowel it again once it starts to set up. But every time that I finish troweling one section of it, I would wash the trowel. Because what will happen is when you get this material on the back of the trowel there, that will drag across the finished plaster, and what you'll get is tram lines going across the plaster. So I'm going to give everybody that wants to have a go at it a go. When I do finish coat, normally because we haven't finished the bottom, I would start at the bottom and go 6 feet up, way above my head, with a single stroke of the trowel like that, with every, and then I would go back afterwards and clean my trowel and then finish that patch that I've done to level it out, leave it, go to the next one. So it's all about movement and pressure to even out the coat. We're pretty good.
Make sure you keep up with your yoga.
Yeah. And like you can see, this stuff goes, you know, this will cover acres and acres of wall.
It's been helpful to understand some of the reasons why sticking with the traditional stuff is better than going to gypsum, because I have a brother who's in construction, and he's kind of come up. I mean, he started as a carpenter, so he's all sort of about traditional carpentry. But when you get into the drywall and the gypsum, and that's let's get it done.
Yeah.
John was saying, it's called nice.
So it's really helpful, I think, to get that. And I do think that, you know, the more you can stick with the fabric of your building, probably the better off you are, because the more things that don't fit together, I mean, you see it in archaeology all the time. People try to fix things and they're fixing with some other material, and, you know, that's always the failure point.
Yep.
You know, so.
Anybody else?
Well, I agree with everything you said, and also, I mean, I'm in a situation where my clients say, we want insulated this, and here you have, like in this house, these beautiful historic windows, and they just want to rip them out because they're single pane, and it makes me crazy, because the others, you know, aesthetically don't go, and the insulated glass windows last 20 years, I don't care what manufacturer you get them from, and very often the corners aren't welded right, and on and on and on, and it's just not the same.
Yep.
And I feel very strongly about using the fabric that's already there, and also you're working with the embodied energy that's already in the building as well, which is really important from a sustainability point of view.
Absolutely. You know, this house is a carbon sink. This building has been carbon neutral probably for about 70 years. So in the terms of what we as a species are talking about globally, this house is a 5-star product, you know, and somebody else could probably just come along, get permission to demo it, throw it into a landfill, which would release all that carbon back into the atmosphere. And you have the historic ambience of the place, you know. I'm sure walls can talk. I don't think we're able to hear them, but I think walls do talk. And I think, you know, that kind of thing. As an aside, if you look in Europe, there is single pane glass now for historic windows that has a better R value than double glazing or even triple glazing. And it's a Finnish manufacturer, and they are going to start importing it to the United States. So all these horrible sash windows that are totally inappropriate for historic buildings and inefficient and don't work properly, even though it's been proven that sash windows are the best ventilation you can get anywhere in the world, you can have your glass replaced with a single pane of glass that has a better R value than any UPVC window on the planet. And you know, they're already 100 and something years old, unlike any other UPVC window that you'll ever come across, because within 10 years it gets degraded by UV light. So there is stuff coming through. There's nothing on this planet that isn't repairable, and we are an adaptive species that have thrived by innovation and repairing and changing things to you know, maybe it's time we turned back on ourselves and started to look at what we've done rather than what we can do. You know, we're charging headlong into the future and causing all sorts of unintended consequences for ourselves by being reckless, I think. So 2 days is kind of too short. And the other thing is that it becomes apparent very, very quickly that this really is a finish. And there's a lot of other things that have to happen before this happens. So, you know, for a first workshop, we're kind of ahead of ourselves in a way, but that's good because it's all been great fun and the weather's been great and the salads were great.
Oh,
Yeah. And but sometimes it's nice to start with the finish because that gives you a goal. You know, oh, you know, even though I've got all this framing work to do and the brickwork needs doing and the foundation's a bit kooky and I need to prop that up, you know, eventually my house is going to look like, not quite, hopefully like that. But it's going to look good, you know, it's going to look, and all the buildings that we work in, live in and love, they are symbiotic beasts. The people that built them, they didn't knowingly do it, but somehow they managed to get stuff together that is viable for much longer than I think they were expecting it to be. You know, I'm pretty sure the people that built the pyramids didn't really expect them to be around for 5,500 years. They thought, oh, you know, we'll build it because we can, we're super human beings and we're technologically advanced. But they didn't sit down and go, this is going to last forever, and people in the 21st century are going to be awed by how we managed to do it, you know. And there's technology there that we still can't replicate with all our space programs and flying machines and electric cars, you know. It's kind of weird. I've worked on buildings in South America where you can't get a piece of metal into the joint. And they're granite buildings that were made by people with bronze tools. And I've hit bronze tools against granite, and you know what happens is the bronze tool just bends. So how did they do it? I think it's amazing. I think people like us should keep that tradition going. I think it's a great way of, and it opens your mind, you know. Everybody I meet everywhere around the world, they're all like you. They're all people that are uber curious about stuff. You know, they might not like doing it, they might give up after a bit, but they want to find out about it at the very beginning, and then they can make their minds up. They're not driven by rhetoric or propaganda or anything like that. You guys, you know, you want to learn about stuff. I think that's great. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.